Hey everybody! Welcome to Prop Live. This is a show that I do every week. My name is Bill Duran. I run a little thing called Punished Props. We do this show every week and take your prop and costume making questions from the internet. Answer them so that you can go out and be an awesome costume and prop maker. This week, it's just me and my sweet gun. I've been working really hard on this project for the guys over at tested.com, and I figured that there's a lot of techniques, a lot of really cool things going into building this, and if you guys have specific questions about it, it would be a great time for me to address those. I'll give you a rundown on the build and everything, and maybe that'll spark some ideas, some questions you might have about this project, some technique, a whole bunch of stuff. Before I jump into that, I want to remind everyone that you can, if you're watching live, you can jump over to punishedprops.com/live and join in on the fun, because there's information there to join the chat room. You can see we've got a chat going. We got a bunch of people in there. Looks like everyone's having a good time. Folks showed up early, actually. People were there like an hour ago talking shop. The chat runs all the time. It's an IRC thing. Anytime you want to go in there and chat with whoever's there, feel free to go for it. Yeah, so go over and do that. Everyone's chit-chatting right now. If you're watching live and you go to the event page for the Google Plus Hangout, that's where you can submit questions that I will answer during the show over the next hour. And those will show up on my screen, which will be awesome. What else do I have? Oh, and then, of course, I want to thank everyone. I don't remember to do this every week. I want to try to remember. I want to thank everyone who supports the show via the Patreon page. That's patreon.com/punishedprops. Again, the show is free to watch, always will be. But if you want to go support the show with your dollars, you totally can. The great thing is we're very close to our next goal. I want to be able to do at least once a month, do a show from the shop. That's in addition to the one we do every week, the Q&A thing, which is $10 away from that. So I do this Q&A thing every week, but in addition to that, I want to do more of the like, hey, watch me build stuff during the shop kind of live streams. So that's our next goal. Me committing to doing that at least once a month over on patreon.com/punishedprops. Thank you again, everyone who has supported it so far. What else? Oh, the other news, part of the thing I'm doing with Tested, they're doing a big reveal for this finished project once they're at San Diego Comic-Con. They have a thing they do there every year now with Adam Savage that I hope to be going to and meeting and becoming best friends with Adam Savage, which is totally going to happen. So I will totally be at San Diego Comic-Con for that and for most of the other festivities. I don't actually have a badge to the event, so we'll see if I can get in somehow. But there's so much that goes on at San Diego Comic-Con outside of the event. I'm sure I'll have plenty of time to, or plenty of stuff to do. So I'll be there all weekend for San Diego Comic-Con in just a few short weeks. And I hope to see a bunch of you guys there. All right. Let's talk about this gun. Let's look at it first. Ready? Whoa. So this is the main rifle body. This is where most of the work has gone into it. If you want to see, blah. This thing is gigantic. This is easily the biggest gun I've built. Most of it is made out of MDF wood. And it's cheap. It's readily available. I got it from Lowe's or Home Depot. And most of it was cut out using just a bandsaw and a scroll saw and then cleaned up with various sanding tools. Some of the circular holes were made just using a drill press. But a lot of the other shapes and stuff were done either free-handed or with one of those cutting tools I told you about. Yeah. Now, this is all done in different layers. If we look at it sort of sideways, we can see all the different layers and thicknesses. The main bulk of it's made out of 3/4 inch MDF. There's 3 main layers of it. And then there's other layers in 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 1/8 inch increments, layered and beveled together to get their different shapes. Oh, also, too, if you head over to tested.com, there's a really great write-up Oh, I mean, it's pretty good, I guess. I wrote it. There's a write-up and a video on my YouTube channel, too, where you guys can check out some of the other stuff. And I'll have more videos about this project as it progresses, at least a couple more videos for this guy. Anyway, you can see there's some of this little green bits here. That's styrene, plastic, little thin sheets of it. There's some bits on here that were like rounded over using Apoxie Sculpt, which is really cool clay that you can sculpt and then it will cure. What else is going on here? Some beveled edges were filled in using some body filler. I like Evercoat's body filler. Let's do this stuff here. Ta-da! Very similar to Bondo, although a little bit smoother, a little creamier. And yeah, lots of sanding in my future. This guy it's pretty close to being ready for like molding. But I have to get a lot of sanding in. I have to seal it. I got to prime it and sand it a whole bunch. I have a couple more pieces to add that are lying over here. Little scope thing, wacky little scope thing. Oh, check this out. This is one of the things I'm using to help me build is a little 1/4 scale version of the rifle. So how neat is that? Thank you to my friends Chris and Cassie for hooking me up with that. What else? Yeah. So yeah, there. Hopefully that was enough to get you whet your appetite. Start thinking of some questions about this project or any project that you're working on. The last thing I want to chat about before I start grabbing those questions are my sanding tools. So I have a bunch of them. They're all laid out right here. Every project I work on has a ton of sanding. Actually, here's another one right here. And this isn't even close to, like, there's a whole bunch of powered sanding tools. These are all just hand sanding tools. A couple of new ones, and we'll have links to a lot of this stuff in the show notes. This is a little sanding stick, and it's got a belt on it with a piece of sandpaper, and it's got this wedge-shaped tip and a rounded tip, which are really cool for doing little intricate details. And you can see I've used some of it, and I can sort of rotate the belt to get a fresh piece of sandpaper. And then this thing sort of springs open and closed so that you can take the belt off and put on a new belt. So that thing was really neat. And I also have these little sanding twigs, another new thing I got. They look like these. These are nail files. Bloop, bloop. There you go. I have a couple of different ones of those. You can see they have that like layered thing going on. These sanding twigs are basically the same thing, only they're really, really thin little strips, and they come in a variety of different, like a variety pack here. You would not believe how handy these little things are for getting in and sanding little detail pieces, little corner pieces. Like highly recommend you go grab some of those guys, as well as some of my own homemade ones. So this is a dowel with a couple of pieces of sandpaper and different grits glued to it. This is just a popsicle stick, same thing. A whole bunch of different sanding papers, just loose paper. And then this is a piece of sanding paper that I put some double-sided tape on because I use it for this guy, for a little powered detailing. This is made by Proxon. It's a little handheld sander, and this thing vibrates back and forth, and you can replace the tip of it. Now it comes with its own sandpaper that's self-adhesive, but you can make some own. Let me start again. Make some of your own yourself with some double-sided tape like that. So this thing, again, really, really super handy for getting detail areas and not having to use all your elbow grease. It's powered. Cool. All right. That's everything I've got right now to throw at you, and looks like some questions are piling up. So I'm going to start grabbing your questions, and we'll get this party on the road. Is that how it goes? Show on the road? All right. We'll get this party started. Here we go. One from our regular Fearless Facade. Fearless Facade, you seem to be the first one in to get all the questions in right away. Let's see here. Any advice for leather strapping for a mask? He's making Corvo's mask from Dishonored. He's having a hard time working out suitable placement and attachment methods for the straps. Let's see if I can bring up a picture. We got a link. That's perfect. So this is Corvo's mask from Dishonored. Now I'm thinking straps for like for holding it on your face. Not really sure exactly. Like I don't think this has straps on like detail or like just for show. If you want straps to hold it to your face, generally, if you can have one that goes over the top of your head and then one that goes around your head, that'll help. You wouldn't believe the one across the top of your head is really, really handy. The cool thing about that is you don't have to have it cinched so tight to your head that it's going to give you a headache from wearing it all day. If you have that one going across the top of your head, put a buckle on it so you can adjust that, and then put a buckle on the one that goes around your head so you can adjust both of those, and you can keep it fairly loose and it'll stay on your head. I would put a little bit of foam across the inside of the forehead on that mask so that you can pull it a little bit tight, but again, it's not going to give you a massive headache. That's where I would put the functional straps for that. So there you go. Good luck. Thank you, Fearless Facade. All right, next one. All right, this one comes from Rob. Rob says, any particular reason you chose to return to MDF for this project, given your previous experiences with foam? I knew I wanted a rigid material to work with because I'm going to be molding this, and since it's rigid, I can fill it with Bondo and sand it until it's the perfect shape and texture that I want. So I knew I wanted something rigid. I have used a bunch of foam. It's not EVA foam. It's a urethane tooling foam. And that stuff is awesome. The problem is it's way more expensive than MDF. I would love to build this whole thing out of that. And maybe I'll do that in the future for different builds. But right now, it just made a lot more sense to just go get MDF because the Lowe's is like right there. I can just go buy it there. So that's why I went with MDF. You're right, though. Foam in the future. And I'll show you, actually, this part right here. Let me zip over. There. This part and any of the other cylindrical parts is made out of urethane tooling foam. And this is a very high density one. And it's great. I lathed it. It turned out really, really well. It seals really well. It sands really well. Awesome stuff. And I would like to do an entire project out of that more often, especially since I've got a CNC mill that hasn't been put together yet. But once it is, that tooling foam is perfect for it. And my camera's freaking out. You want to stop that, buddy? All right. Cool. All right, this one is from Axeman's Projects. Let's see here. From your Twitter pictures, it looked like you're going to use green foam for the cylinders, and you mentioned using a lathe. Can you elaborate on the steps to use foam in the lathe, or wood versus foam, pros and cons in this situation? The green foam was that tooling foam right there. It's the same stuff, just a different density. The green stuff is a lot less dense. I actually, because I'm molding all of these pieces. I mentioned it yesterday. I was doing all that stuff on the lathe. My buddy Harrison over at Bolton Props said, hey, you know, that stuff could cause curing inhibition with silicone, with platinum silicone. I said, I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. I have this stuff I have right here, this density. I've molded that before bare, like on platinum silicone, and it worked just fine. So I didn't think there would be a problem. But I did a test. Let's do this here. I'll do a write-up on this test as well because there's, I think, some good information here. So these are the different densities of foam going from less to most dense. And this is some silicone that I poured on it. Now, the two most dense ones worked out just fine. They cured no problem. But the two less dense ones caused some curing inhibition in the silicone. Basically, the silicone just doesn't cure. It stays all gooey. And that's sadness. And I didn't want to pour that all over a piece of a piece that I built and have it not cure. So I went and replaced that green foam with the more dense stuff. And that's what all of these pieces, and I got some more over here. I'll show you. That's it. They were all turned out of was that high density urethane tooling foam, also called Renshape, I think. We'll have to put a link to that. I just got to double check right now. Phone, you want to? Yep. I was corrected yesterday. My buddy Frank Ippolito, you guys may know, was like, "Oh, Renshape." Yeah, we'll find a link to Renshape. We'll put it in the link in the description. Anyway, he goes, "Oh, it's Renshape." I was like, "What's that?" He says that it's the tooling foam that you've been using. All right, cool. Anyway, that's what I did with the foam. It was used in the lathe. Basically, I would cut a rectangular prism. In this case, Brittany, my lovely wife, cut a bunch of rectangles for me, and then you center it. And then you put it in the lathe, you spin it up, and then using your chisels, you gouge it down to a cylinder shape, and then you cut in all the details on the lathe. With wood, you can totally do that, but most woods with a wood grain are hard, or at least harder to turn because they don't have a homogeneous density. MDF does. It's the same density throughout. Same thing with the tooling foam. That's why it tools so very well. Yeah, so that's why wood versus foam. I like the foam. Let's see. Also, Axemans wants to know, in the future, can you do one of your quick tutorial videos that shows how to use SketchUp for a layered project like this? Perhaps a tutorial on just a smaller part of the larger gun. I'll tell you what, I just started using SketchUp. I've never used it before. Now, granted, I do have a background in CAD and 3D modeling. However, if you go grab SketchUp, they have some beginner tutorial videos that go right along with it. I just followed those. There's like maybe an hour worth of videos to follow, and those will get you going really, really fast. What I might actually do is the next time I draw something in SketchUp, I may do a live stream and just live stream the whole process while I'm working on it, and then you guys could maybe follow along with that if you'd like. So that's something I may do the next time I use SketchUp. There you go. Thank you, Axemans, for your question. This next one here, another regular. Don't try this at home. Wants to know, what are some obscure but super cool, oh my God, why didn't I think of this? It's the best thing in the world, tools that you've come across over the years? This guy I showed you just before, this little sanding tool. I just found this like a week ago. I was like, what? How is that? How have I never seen this before? Same thing with these sanding twigs. They're so cool. Also, I've got this guy right here. My shopmate, Will, who's not actually over there. He usually is. He gave me this. This is a ruler made out of EVA foam floor mats. And you can see he drew inch markers on it. When you're doing measurements on your body that are going to be made into foam, if you measure it with the normal tape, it doesn't account for the thickness. And that can actually change the dimensions of your piece drastically. So if I'm like measuring my pipes with the foam, it'll account for the thickness if that's something I'm going to make out of foam. So this was a thing. He had one. I was like, what is this? He'd been in my shop, like working here for like a year. And he's like, oh, it's a foam ruler for making foam stuff. Like, oh my gosh, how come I didn't think of that? So that's one of those tools as well. Yeah, there's a couple for you. Thanks. Don't try this at home. Here we go. Next one is from Adam, another regular. Adam says, have you ever had issues with rattle can clear coat not drying in a uniform smooth coat? I took all the precautions to ensure a clean surface, and it still came out slightly textured to the touch. Is there such a thing as an expired can? Not that I know of. I haven't technically had a lot of issues with clear coats, although I tend to go for like matte finishes. I haven't done a lot of glossy coats on stuff. The handful of things I have done glossy, what I did was I added a lot of layers of the clear, and then I wet sanded that down to the finish that I wanted and buffed it and polished it. So I didn't count on the final, the clear coat being the final finish on it. I went over and smoothed it out myself. I do know if you really want to get into super durable smooth clear coats, then you want to start dipping your toe into the world of catalyzed paints, the stuff they would use for like car finishes. You'll need a compressor, you'll need an HVLP spray gun, but that's why cars are so shiny, and that's why they stay so shiny. Yeah, so there's some things for you to look into, Adam. Good luck. All right. Good question so far, you guys. This one here is from Old Gamers Rule. Old Gamers wants to know, I'm in the middle of doing an M8 Avenger rifle from Mass Effect. And by the way, new Mass Effect game, woo, coming out. Mass Effect Andromeda. I'm pretty excited about that. I don't know about you guys, but I'm stoked. He wants to put electronic and LEDs and possibly a speaker to play sound files and wondering how to leave space when casting. There's a couple of things you can do. One, you can rotocast it. Basically, you close the mold, you pour a little bit of resin in, and then you slush it around so that it leaves an even coating on the inside. For something like a gun, you'll have to do several coats like that, and you'll have to keep it moving a lot to make sure it stays even on all surfaces. It can be very tricky. But that way, the piece comes out hollow with just a thin shell on the outside. That's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is you can plan your build so that there's a cavity for you to build your pieces into. So for example, if this was, let's say I was going to put lights in this, I may pick some seams where it wouldn't be obvious. This freaking camera. I need this camera to stop doing that. Yep. Let's figure that out. You done? All right. Nope. Sorry about this, you guys. Seems like so long as it's moving, it's not freaking out too much. There you go. Okay, so either pick a spot where it would be easy to fill in some seams after the fact. There it goes again. Or pick a spot that already has some seams that you can work with, and in the master create a cavity. So I don't have any with me, of course, but the space gun I did for my Kickstarter, I built a cavity into the mold, and then another mold piece was a cover that went over that cavity. So I molded it in more than one piece, leaving that empty space in the middle. And then once all the pieces were cast, I could put electronics in it and then cover it with the other piece that capped it. So there you go. A couple things for you to try. Oh, real quick before we keep moving on here, I'll show you a couple more pieces that I've got. This guy right here. This is one of the, and all of these pieces were just getting sprayed, so I have them on sticks, on clamps, so I can hang them. This is one of the barrel pieces, and this one was made, it's not cylindrical, so I couldn't do it on the lathe, but some of these other pieces are. So this guy right here, all the tubes that run down the length of it, this is what that is here. Actually, let's do this. There you go. So this is those tubes. You can see I left a bit on there. This will stay in the mold. That'll be like my pouring spout for the mold, like that. This was all that urethane tooling foam. However, it's gray now, and the reason is I sprayed it with a filler. The Evercoat, again, the company that makes that filler that I like, they have something called Featherfill. Something, again, Harrison Cricks turned me on to because he enjoys making me spend money. It's a catalyzed, meaning you put a catalyst, you mix in a catalyst, and that causes a chemical reaction that makes this cure rock solid. Catalyzed liquid filler. It's like liquid Bondo, if you can think about that. Put it in an HVLP sprayer, and you spray it all over your pieces. And it basically coats your whole thing in like a thin layer of Bondo. So for, it's kind of hard to see, but there's texture on there. Yeah, you're not going to get it on there. But there's a texture on there, and I can now sand that down. This whole gun is going to get sealed that way, which is great because MDF likes to have on these cut surfaces the fuzzies, lots of little fuzzy areas. And this will take care of that. It'll coat all of that in a nice rock solid thin shell of filler, and then I can sand it down nice and smooth. Boom. There's something else. If you guys are looking for something really fun and advanced to try and you have the technology, Featherfill. We'll link to that in the description. All right, next question. Jason Lee, another regular. A lot of regulars. I love seeing that so many regulars. We have so many of you guys in the chat. You guys are awesome. Jason Lee wants to know, I know you're going to mold it, but how heavy is this master going to be, and how heavy is the model one going to be? I don't know how heavy the finished one's going to be, but check this out. I have a scale right here. Let's find out how much this thing weighs. All right, we're on pounds. All right. Okay, the scale says overload. I don't know what the limit is on this thing, but it's too much. It's a lot. Put that away. It's too much for my kitchen scale, but I'm going to guess this thing is about, I mean, that's gigantic. Look at that thing. I'm going to guess at least 15 pounds, probably. Solid MDF. It's pretty heavy. The molded one, hopefully a lot less than that. I'm going to guess 7 or 8 pounds, I hope. I don't know. We'll see. I've got all these. A lot of these, like some of these are small. Like these will be cast solid probably. But there's this big freaking tube that comes off the back of it, or the bottom of it here. That one will definitely be rotocast, so it'll be hollow. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jason. Let me take a sip of my delicious Coke Zero. I should share my Coke with sis. I don't have a sis. I have sister-in-laws. Nate wants to know, hey, Bill, I'm making Her Mercy from Destiny. I have that gun. It's a revolver. I was wondering, how do you make a moving hammer and trigger? I would start by getting a cap gun or looking at how a cap gun does that. Like buy a toy one or look for a picture or a video online of how the cap gun mechanics work and try and copy that. I've never really done the working hammer and trigger sort of thing in one of my props, but that's the way I would go. I would either copy how it's done or buy one that's already made, like a toy one, and just incorporate those pieces into your build, at least just the mechanical parts to make it work. That's how I would do it. Okay, thank you, Nate. This next one comes from Hunter. I'm not sure, but have you done a tutorial on how you make molds for kits? I haven't done like a comprehensive mold making tutorial. The problem is every time it's mold making time, I'm like behind the 8 ball and I have to get it finished like the next day. So I never have time to grab my camera and like shoot a whole video for that. I would love to be able to put together a comprehensive mold making tutorial like book or video. It just hasn't been in the cards just because it's so time intensive. But again, I want to do that. Trust me. I will say we can link to a couple of these over on Tested. Frank Ippolito did a couple of videos, a 1-part mold and a 2-part mold that are both really good. So you can go, we'll link to those. You can go check them out. Good place to start. Let's see here. This next one comes from Imantas. What method would you recommend for gluing resin castings together? Now, I used to use just a 5-minute epoxy for that. If there are any bigger pieces, I would pin them together using like aluminum rods or something, or screws. But I used to use 5-minute epoxy, but my buddy Xander over at ZProps, who, speaking of Destiny revolvers, has made a whole bunch of those. He uses super glue, and I've been using that more and more lately on resin stuff. And I'll tell you what, I am converted. It's fantastic. Super glue does the trick. So yeah, I just have this stuff here, always on hand. This is the Instacure brand of super glue that I like. This one's mine because it has my name on it. This is Bill's super glue. I have the spray accelerant for it. So if you have an area where you're going to have a big pocket of glue, you can hit it with that quick setting stuff and it will cure all the way. So there you go. You could use a 5-minute epoxy if you need to. Actually, here's a good example. Let's do this here. So this tube that I glued in place, I could have super glued that, right? This canister thing on top there. But I didn't. Super glue, as soon as it hits moisture, it cures. So I wanted to have a little bit of time to position that. So I used a 5-minute epoxy. I mix up the epoxy, I put it in place, and then I was able to position that canister until it was just right. And I could clamp it there and let it cure all the way. Yeah, sometimes you want that extra time. Super glue, on the other hand, loves to cure instantly, which usually is a good thing. So you can work really fast. Thank you, Imontas. Jason, again, another question from Jason says, when sanding a square piece of foam by hand, how do you prevent the edges from catching and having the edges end up being rounded? A lot of that, if I'm trying to make something at least close to square, I use my disc sander. I wouldn't do it by hand just because I have a disc sander. It's got a bed and you can set it to 90 degrees and make sure that everything is nice and square. If I have a small thing that I'm sanding and I want to like sand the flat side of it, I'll take a piece of sandpaper and I'll lay it down flat on the table, and then I'll take the piece that I have, let's say, let's grab this here, like this, let's say this is my piece. I'll lay it flat and then move it side to side on the sandpaper. So I'm not moving the sandpaper, I'm moving the piece across the sandpaper, and you do it fairly slowly, and then you can flip it to the other side and sand it that way. That way you have a nice big surface. You can even get a big flat piece of sandpaper and really move it around, and just making sure that you're putting pressure mostly all the way down, because if you go crazy, your piece will end up going side to side, and then you'll round them a bit. But yeah, try that. Lay down a piece of sandpaper and move your piece on top of it. Bloop, bloop, bloop. All right. Let's see here. The next one comes from Jasper. For the small business portion of setting up Punished Props, could you give us an idea of your business plan? Also, did you just toss the tax crap to a CPA, or do you break down and do all that yourself? Let's start with the taxes thing. The first couple of years, I did all of the accounting and tax stuff myself. The main thing there is tracking your expenses, and because tracking income isn't that hard, especially because at first all of my payments came through PayPal. Really easy to track my income, but tracking your expenses is really, really tricky if all you're doing is if you're using your personal account along with as your business account, like your checking account. So step one, get a business account right away, business checking account. Because then every expense you make with that checking account is a business expense. And then you can just go through your monthly bank statements, and there's all of your expenses. I have switched to a bookkeeping service called Bench. They do all of the bookkeeping stuff for me. So they every month they get my statements and they go through them all. And if they have any questions, they'll say, "Hey, what was this expense?" And I can clarify it for them. And then at the end of the year, they give me a document that covers all of my expenses, all of my income, and then I can go and do my taxes. I could pay someone to do my taxes, but I've done it for the last few years, and it's, especially with the stuff that they help me set up, pretty easy. In the future, depending on the different facets of my business, it might get more complicated. We'll see how it goes. As far as a business plan is concerned, it's weird because the plan has changed a lot. When I got started, I literally quit my job and said, "Oh, I will just build take commissions and build them and get paid for them. And that's it. Like, that's all I had planned. And since then, it has changed dramatically. And it does so every month or so. Now, I'm putting a much heavier focus on the instructional content I do, the books, the blog, the videos, and then finding more useful ways to monetize those things. You know, selling ebooks or selling print books, or making ad revenue on my YouTube videos, or the Patreon that you guys are so generously supporting. All of those things get sort of factored into that plan. And I have ideas for the future, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, according to plan. It's just, at some point I should write down what that plan is, but I haven't yet. Thank you, Jasper, for your question. People in the chat are talking about FreshBooks for doing accounting and invoicing and all that stuff. I haven't checked them out, but I've heard good things about them, so maybe that's a good thing to check out there. FreshBooks. All right. Oh, Developing Cosplay yells out, YouTube money. I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. I don't make a lot from ad revenue on YouTube. I make more from Patreon for this show than I do from ad revenue on YouTube. It's not great. I'm not exactly pulling in fail army numbers on my YouTube channel. All right, Willard wants to know, how much better is the performance of Evercoat compared to Bondo? And does it smell the same? Yeah, it smells pretty much the same. I find that Bondo will sometimes get little bubbles in there, and it gets less of that. So that's good. And application is a little bit smoother, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think you can get the same final product using both of them, but Evercoat just gets there in a nicer way. Again, I bought this. My buddy Matt Munson recommended it to me. I bought this tiny can just to try it out, and I'm sold on it. I'll totally go buy the big can next time. Good stuff. There we go. So you can do the same if you want to find out. It's like $7. Go buy a tiny can and see how you like it. Okay, here we go. This one is from Amir. How would you recommend cleaning needle files? I keep getting them all clogged up. So that must be these little guys here. I've got a whole bunch of them. These tiny little files. One thing, I have one of these rubber things for my belt sander and disc sander for cleaning them up. You can use that. It's rubber. It's supposed to grip onto stuff and clean out your thing. That helps a little bit. A fine steel brush, a wire brush, I guess, what you would call it, can help too. Yeah, the rubber thing isn't working great. But yeah, make them a wire brush. There you go. Something with stiff, rigid bristles that can fit in those little grooves on your file to clean them out. But I will say, let's see, man, I beat the crap out of this thing. For the most part, though, yeah, the clogged up thing isn't that bad. Actually, these all look pretty clogged up. Now that I look at it, yeah, I guess a nice fine wire brush would be the best way to do that. I feel you though. I've had the same problem. Brass wire brush. People in the chat are saying brass wire brush. I think I have one. Wait, I'm gonna check. You guys are getting the real live workshop experience. Do I have one in here? This is like my car fixing and cleaning. Everything I need to fix my car is in this toolbox. I thought I had one. Oops. Nope. I was wrong. Anyway, brass wire brush. There. All right. Next question. This one's from Cosplay Armory. Hey, Bill, this isn't so much a question about the gun in general. What do you use as final sealant on your props? I know you say spray can, but what brand? Mine always dull the metal paint. It really depends on the finish I want to get. So a lot of times I'll go with just a matte clear. For this prop, I'll probably end up with a matte clear coat over it. It's not, although there are some metal parts, I'll probably do a different way. There's this stuff that Testors makes called Metalizer lacquer that's really amazing, and they make a sealant specifically for that that does a pretty good job of sealing metallic paints without dulling the luster that you get on there. You do need an airbrush to spray it, so you'll have to invest in one of those, but it works pretty well, so I recommend that. Ted Smith recommends this stuff. I grabbed some. I haven't tried it yet. This is Pledge Floor Care Finish, multi-surface finish stuff. Here, we'll link to that in the show notes. He recommends this for doing like metallic finishes on his foam armor and stuff. What else? There's a couple things for you to try. Some spray paint, some other things. Okay, then. Tristan wants to know. Tristan is making a Pokeball. I'm having some trouble getting the sphere right. Any tips? I started with a wax model and plaster, and I'm still getting a lot of little defects. If I was going to build something that needed to be a sphere, I would buy something that was already spherical. What do they make? The globes, light globes. Acrylic spheres they put over light fixtures. They make those in various sizes. That might be a really good place to start. I did a Risty from Queensblade mace build video, and the head of that was made out of one of those acrylic spheres. If you need, the problem is there's an opening on one side with like a flanged bit so that it holds into your light fixtures. You could buy 2 of those and then cut them along the hemisphere and then glue them together to have a perfect sphere. I would start with that because then you don't have to try and, you can work hard on making it look like a Pokeball and not work hard on making it look like a ball. You already have a ball. That's what I would start with. Because spheres are hard to make. Circles are hard to make. Spheres are like a whole bunch of circles. Oh, cool. Core Geek, my buddy Eric says you can also get that Metalizer sealer in a spray can. Look for that stuff at your hobby stores. There's a Hobbytown USA near me that they have that. Next time I'm there, I'll have to see if they have that Metalizer sealer in a spray can. I will totally buy some. Bloop, 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 bloop. This one's from Wade. He says, I'm making 2 swords with sheaths that need to go in someone's back. I hope you mean the sheaths go on someone's back and the swords go in the sheaths, not the swords go in someone's back. Any tips? I know that there's a lot of people do Deadpool cosplay, and that's a pretty frequent feature. So go look up like other Deadpool costumes and see how they've handled that. I do know, like, it's a thing that people have made before a lot. So you go find some references on how other people have solved that problem. I believe it's got to be like a shoulder harness strap that crosses in the back, and then you can attach your sheaths to that harness thing, and then you slide your swords in and you're good to go. But again, I would just go look up some references and see how other people have solved that problem. Or who knows, that might be something that you can just buy. Like dual, let's look this up. Dual sword back sheath. Let's see what comes up. That's a Skyrim mod. What is that? Sound and Boat Works. Oh, that's like for attaching yourself to a boat. Double sword back mount set. How about that? Yeah, these sort of things are just available. Yeah, check this out. Swords of the Forge. They've got a cool looking solution there. So even if you don't buy their thing, you could just look at it and see how they made it and try and make something similar. There you go, Wade. Good luck with your swords. Bloop, 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 bloop. All right. Next question comes from Craft Access. What do you do with the master, in this case, the MDF Master? Do you keep it as is, or do you paint it? Will you remold it again, or do you usually just mold one project once? I have a box. I call it my box of chocolate. It's a box full of all of my masters. What I would love to do is like have a wall where I hang up all my masters. Most of them have been primed with that ruddy red primer, so they look like chocolate. I want to have like a wall in my shop with all my masters like displayed there, and I keep them that way, and I keep them unpainted in case I do need to remold them. Some things I have had to remold, so you go grab the master again. If it needs any touch up, you clean it up a little bit, and then you can make a mold again. Yeah, so this guy will be the same thing. Once it's molded, the master will be put somewhere safe in case I need to make the mold again. So yeah, that's what I do with my masters. I got a big old pile of them over there, just in case. I picture it like if anyone played the Hitman games, you have your base where there's just a wall of guns. Picture it like that. I want a wall of all my masters. Okay. Let's see. There was someone was linking something in the chat, and let's see here. There we go. This is a don't try this at home. Link this. We were talking about cleaning our files. This is a Nicholson file and rasp cleaner. It's a wire brush that you use to clean your files, and I'm probably going to buy one right now. No, I'm going to add it to my wish list. Ta-da! Cool. Thanks for that one. That's a good link right there. We will of course provide a link to that in the show notes. Cool. This next one comes from Imantas. What core material would you recommend for fiberglass katana? I was thinking of using aluminum to get it lighter. I'm not sure I understand if it's a fiberglass katana. Making it a fiberglass? For the blade, like I don't use a lot of metal. For sword blades, I usually go with wood. Something like, what would I say? Like poplar wood with something that does have a grain in it that will give it more structure and support. MDF would be bad for that, especially because it can't get wet or else it falls apart. Or because it doesn't have any wood grain, it would break pretty easily if it was a long, thin piece of it. But if you're good at using aluminum, if you have the tools to work with aluminum, then go for it. You could totally make the core of your sword out of aluminum. My brother made a really long Dragon Age sword, and the outside of it was foam, just like squishy EVA foam, but he just put a thin strip of aluminum. He didn't have to. I got some right here. Something like this. This is just a thin piece of aluminum from the hardware store, but you could use this and it gives it a little more structure. It's still kind of floppy. But you can put foam outside of this and then carve that to look like your blade. So there's an option for you. All right, about 10 minutes left. Boy, you guys are throwing the questions in hot. They're good questions, too. This one is from Patrick. He says, do you have any suggestions for metallic paint on paint? With my toy gun custom, the gold paint I used just went all funky and peeled off after I inked it while weathering it. A couple of things. Different types of paint don't play well with one another. If you read Harrison Crick's painting book, which, by the way, is available in my store on punishprops.com, he's got a really great chart in there that shows lacquer, acrylic, and enamel, and which ones like playing with one another. So if you base coat something with, let's say, acrylic, what might you not want to put on top of that? Or enamel or lacquer or whatever. I just can't think of the whole chart right now. But anyway, some paints don't like playing with one another. Also, if your metallic paint is acrylic and you brush it on and let it dry, and then you go over that with your weathering paint, also acrylic, it can peel the layer up below it. You'll want to seal that base coat with like a clear spray paint first before going over it with the same kind of paint, because it can basically make that paint wet again, and then when you brush your weathering paints on there, it'll pull it up. So definitely, like if you're, like I said, if you're going to paint it with, let's say, acrylics, paint on your base coat and then seal it with a clear spray sealer, and then go over it and do your weathering. That's probably the best combo right there. Thank you, Patrick. All right, someone in the chat just says, "Don't go whipping your swords out." Good to know. That's some good. That's good life advice, really, all around. This question is from It's Kiwi. Why the ruddy red primer for Masters? I noticed a few other people like Vulpin use it too. Usually, I will swap between gray and red. I'll hit it with, let's say, gray first, and then sand it down. Or it's, again, it depends. The idea is you're going to get small imperfections in the piece you're working on from little scratches, from like your higher grit sandpaper, and you want to be able to see where those are if you have to fill them, or if you've sanded down enough so that they go away. So if you spray on, let's say, a red base coat and you sand down to the material below it, you'll see wherever there is still red, that means that's a low spot. That's a spot that still has paint in it. So you either need to sand that away or fill it with something like Bondo, or if it's small, some of this air drying spot putty that I love so much. Then you could go over that again. If there's still a lot of red on there, go over it with your gray primer and do the same thing. Sand it down, and anywhere you still see gray, you know is a low spot, and you either need to fill it or sand it down a little bit more. I generally end up using the red, although on this one I'm probably not going to. I'm probably going to use a Catalyzed automotive primer that is gray, and that's just how it'll be. The colors are really just as a visual guide. You see Harrison use that because he's really picky about the surface finish he gets on his props. And he'll go over stuff several times before he's happy with how it looks. Another one from Iman Toss. Let's see. Oh, it would be metal, and the outside would be fiberglass. Yeah, I mean, fiberglass is pretty rigid. But if you put an aluminum core in your sword and then did the outside in fiberglass, it would be plenty durable for sure. Okay. Let's see here. Another one from Amir. Recently started fiddling around with SketchUp as well, and I'm interested in 3D printing. What would be the next step you could recommend in terms of software? I got my eyes on ZBrush. Any opinions? If you're going to do 3D printing, I know a lot of people do 3D printing from ZBrush, and I'm pretty sure most of the 3D software packages nowadays facilitate 3D printing. I haven't done much of it myself, though, so I can't really speak to a specific workflow. But I can tell you that go for ZBrush. It's fairly cheap. You get a lifetime. When you buy it, it's no subscription thing. You just own it, and you get all the updates forever. So that's really handy. And I know a lot of people 3D print from it. So go for it. Why not, man? Do it. All right. Here's one. Okay. Don't try this at home says, thanks for the liquid Bondo link. That is going to make my life much, much easier. Again, that's the Featherfill stuff from Evercoat, and it's wonderful. All right. Oh, the other great thing about the Catalyzed stuff is spray paint or any paint has to dry. It's got a solvent in there, I think, and it has to evaporate completely for your piece to be totally dry. So temperature and humidity in the area where you're painting can have a huge effect on how long it takes or even if it ever dries. The catalyzed stuff, because you mix in a catalyst, it starts a chemical reaction and it cures all the way, no matter what. There's not a lot that can stop it from curing, which is great. With this stuff, basically, you mix it up, spray it on, and inside of an hour, it's done. If you warm it up a bit, it'll cure even faster. That means your spray gun needs to get cleaned before then, or else it'll cure rock solid and will be useless to you. But it's awesome. It cures all the way, and you know it's done. You don't have to guess whether or not it's done. It is totally done. This stuff I sprayed probably 2 hours ago, and it is totally, I can sand it. So if you like to work fast, it's a really great way to do that. This one, well, we're almost done. This one's from Craft Access. Let's see, I have a small knife mold. What is the proper way to maintain it to get as much good castings as I can get? So use mold release. I like to use baby powder. I like the finish you get when you pull it out of the mold. The problem is that baby powder will pull moisture out of your mold. So every 5 castings or so, spray some mold release into the mold while it's lying open. Let it sit for about an hour and then wipe it away. That'll help re-moisturize the mold. It's still going to pull moisture out. You're still going to eventually destroy that mold. That's just the way it goes. That is the life. Such is the life of a silicone mold. But I have some tin cure silicone molds that I've gotten 50 or more pulls out of, especially some of the smaller ones. Any fine details or overhangs or anywhere that's going to pull a little bit, those areas will be the first to go when your mold does start to die. Just be aware of that. For example, on this guy here, not that, there it goes. I know there are areas, for example, these tiny little spots here in the handle, those are 1/4 inch deep. And I was worried that those little detail pieces would pull on the silicone too much. So I filled them a little bit. Not all the way. I still want there to be detail in there. But I put some epoxy in there and filled it up almost to the lip so that there's less area for that little detail bit of silicone to grab onto and possibly tear out when demolding the piece. So there's a couple ways to extend the life of your mold. Last one. This one's from Nate. Nate wants to know about plastic. Nate says, I'm looking for some styrene sheets and I have no idea where I could find it. Any ideas? Sure. I'm really spoiled. We have a place called Calsac Plastics that's nearby, and my favorite is Tap Plastics. We have 2 or 3 locations in the Seattle area, and they have all kinds of styrene. I usually get sheets of it. I have a huge couple of sheets, those white things right there, in 16th inch and 1/8 inch thicknesses. The 16th inch stuff is what I use most of the time. You can also get it at the hardware store. If you go to the sign section at Home Depot or Lowe's, you can find this really thin plastic here. That's also styrene. Really handy. Also in wonderful colors like green and pink. And a lot of the for sale signs that they have, those are all styrene as well. So if you just need some styrene plastic, that is a good place for it. You can also go to your hobby store. I know Hobbytown USA has a really good selection of styrene that people use for their train building. Now, it doesn't usually come in big sheets. It's a little bit more expensive. However, actually, I may have a piece in here. Yep. You can get it in, here's one of the things that they have. This is a couple thin strips of what they call half round styrene. So it's like a dowel that's been split down the length. So making this yourself would be a pain in the ass, but they make it. Now this 2 pieces of it like this is like $3.50, so it's not exactly cheap. But if it's that little thing you need, then it's super handy. So go check out what your local hobby store has. If they have a collection of styrene stuff, lots of different shapes and textures and sizes, like tiny tubes, like square and rectangular tubes. Yeah, so there's a couple things for you to go check out. Thank you, Nate, for your question. And thank you, everyone else. Looks like we're all done here. You guys brought some wonderful questions. Hopefully you guys are just as excited as I am to see this rifle finished. I'll have another video out next week all about finishing and molding this guy. So look forward to that. Look forward to more on tested.com. And yeah, that's that. Thank you again, everybody. And thank you, live chat. You guys are awesome. Doing their thing in there. All right. Until next week, this is Bill signing off.